Hello and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics podcast. I'm your host, Alex Safranis, and today we're on with Jim Sterne. Jim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jim Sterne. The shortest version I can tell you is I've been following what's coming since 1979. So, from selling Apple IIes out of a retail store to selling business computers to companies that had never owned one before, to convincing companies that they should have a website and then explaining to them why digital analytics was important. That brought me into machine learning, which is my last book over the shoulder here, which is Artificial Intelligence in Marketing Practical Applications from 2017. So that's machine learning. And now it's everything like everything is generative AI. So my focus for generative AI is twofold. One is how do you bring it into the organization? Change management. What are the steps? How do you protect yourself and educate everybody? And on the other hand, it does this new thing that's very exciting that people aren't paying a whole lot of attention to, which is innovation and creativity and brainstorming.
So, you've written a few books now. I'm just curious, what's your process for researching and then putting together a book? How does that work from a high level?
It starts with what subject am I most interested in? And then I create a folder. And every time I trip over something, it goes, that relates to what I'm interested in, I throw it in there. So I just finished a book, just got it to the publisher about the future of customer relationships given generative AI. That should be out in August. And I also have another folder that is just exploding with things in research and stuff to follow up on for my next book. Then it's a matter of organizing. So here's old days versus current. Old days, manila folders. I would print things out and put them in manila folders. Each folder was a chapter. And then I would go to the dining room table and spread out each chapter and move things around and try to get it organized and what's a logical sequence. And then I could say, okay, now I have an outline. Today it's a little different. I build a custom GPT and I upload all of that stuff and say, what's the logical sequence? And it gives me an outline, which saves me an enormous amount of time. And then it is all about interviews, reaching out to people and saying, I think this and this, what do you think? And they correct me, they give me new insights, or they go, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that before. And all of that ends up going into a book.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, wow. How did you, just going back to the first book you ever published, how did
Mm.
you decide you wanted to write a book?
Well, because we didn't have blogs yet. That was 1995. And I needed to explain to people why they needed a website. So World Wide Web Marketing came out. And it was because my public presentations, my keynotes were very well received. I was asked to present all over the world, and I just wasn't reaching enough people. So, what do? You write a book, or you develop some amazing ballroom dancing capability and go on television. And that was not going to happen for me.
Yeah.
So, book it is.
That's really interesting. Now, a quick word from our sponsor for this episode, Adverity. Is your marketing team drowning in data? With so many platforms and sources, it can be overwhelming. If you're spending more time organizing data than analyzing it, you're not alone. But what if you had a solution that makes your marketing data work for you? Introducing Adverity, the platform that helps you build a unified and accurate data foundation. Adverity integrates and transforms all of your marketing data in one place, allowing your marketing and analytics teams to spot trends, optimize performance, and drive results faster. No more guessing and no more data chaos. Just insights that matter. Trusted by global brands like Amex, IKEA, and Red Bull, Adverity has helped businesses gain a competitive advantage and unlock their full potential. Ready to make your data extraordinary? Visit adverity.com and book your demo today. That's Adverity, ADVERITY.com, because your data deserves better. Thanks. And now back to the episode.
So the book you just published on machine learning, that came out before a lot of the generative AI stuff came out.
Yeah, 2017.
Is that still as relevant in this world? Like, how does machine learning changed in usefulness with generative AI? Has it at all? Or has generative AI taken over some of the stuff that machine learning used to do?
They are different animals. So first of all, generative AI is the culmination of what you can do with machine learning. So machine learning is supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning, all of which are necessary to make generative AI happen. The difference is that machine learning is about prediction and generative AI is about generation. And they are such different animals. I am going to use machine learning in my deterministic workflows. So somebody comes to the website, and as soon as I can, I want to figure out what segment do they belong in, what might they be interested in, what's the best way to reach out to them, what kind of messaging. And machine learning is great for that if I have enough data. But if I know what message to send them because they belong in a certain segment, then I can go to generative AI to generate the message. Hopefully, I'm smart enough to have a human review it before it goes out the door.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting point. How do you see generative AI improving in the future, especially with regard to some of the hallucination and other mistakes that it might make when it's interacting with potential customers? Right now, it's not quite there yet where we can just trust it to go alone into that relationship sphere with customers and potential customers. But how do you see that changing in the future?
Thousands of PhDs all over the world are working very hard to make generative AI more deterministic. So we've gone from deterministic to statistical analysis and predictive. So deterministic to probabilistic to now linguistic. And language is awkward, and even humans misremember and misspeak and try to deceive. And so you learn whom to listen to and how. What, for instance, if my brother suggests a great New Mexican restaurant, I'm going to avoid it like the plague because he loves really hot, spicy food, and I do not. So I consider the source. So we've got deterministic. Machine learning is great for probabilistic, that I can put into a deterministic workflow. Now on the generative AI side, we've got a foundational model. Now we're going to do some fine tuning to make it good for customer service. Now we're going to create another model filled with specific fine tuning to look at the output from the first one to determine whether it's fit for purpose. And then another model to check that, and how many turtles all the way down. How many do you need so that it's good enough? Because even a human on the other end of the phone can misspeak or be misunderstood. We do have a couple of examples of the car dealership that went to court to say, no, we didn't mean to sell that car for $1. And the judge said, yeah, but your chatbot said it was a deal, so it's a deal. I forget which airline had a problem with bereavement policy. They tried to get their money to get the ticket waived, and they said, no, you can't. So, but your chatbot said I could. They lost in court. So we're building models to check the output of models. And that is the value of these models being accurate and cutting down on hallucinations is so big that it's going to get solved. It really is. This is a 2025, 2026 solution happening. That said, leaning into hallucination is where scientific breakthroughs, innovation, great art, brilliant new ideas are going to come from.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious, you saw the internet bubble grow and then burst. Do you see a similarity between the internet bubble bursting and generative AI companies?
The value of generative AI is so obvious that the bubble bursting, we saw a little bit of it when DeepSeek came out of China, and NVIDIA lost a whole bunch of value, but it got it back in a week or two because everybody realized, oh, it's not the end of the world. But the value is so obvious. I love to quote Ethan Mollick, who, number one, said, "This is the dumbest AI you will ever use." And number two said, if all development of AI stopped today, it would take us 10 years to figure out how to use what we have. But it's still continuing to get smarter and smarter. So I don't see a bubble bursting. I see this as being a huge sea change. This is a step change.
That's really interesting. I want to hold on to that idea that we're not fully utilizing AI. So I heard this opinion a while back that a business should not put AI as the center of the business. In other words, the IP that the business develops should not be wholly centered around AI, but rather in the technology that the business creates that then maybe connects to an AI, such that as the AI changes and develops, it doesn't put the business at risk, or if it gets shut down or regulated or somehow changes, that doesn't put the business at risk. So, do you agree with that? How do you see AI being placed within business technology?
Let's go back to digital transformation. If you are a 100-year-old, fast moving consumer goods products company, then yeah, you want to continue to do your market research and do your research and development and do your manufacturing and supply chain and blah, blah, blah. Oh, by the way, you can augment those things with AI. Awesome. On the other hand, just as we had digital native companies that said, you know what? We're going to sell books online. Oh, nobody's going to buy things on the internet. I guess they'll buy books, but nobody will buy shoes on the internet. I guess they'll buy shoes. Nobody will buy cars. And now we're buying houses. So those companies that said, hey, guess what? We're going to be digital first, and we're going to be Airbnb, and we're going to be Uber, and we're going to be Netflix, and we're going to figure out how to be digital centric without depending on, I'm not going to build my business on Facebook because Facebook might just turn off my account for reasons I don't understand. But I'm going to use Facebook to augment my company. Absolutely. So building on AI, now is the question is, what is your tech stack? I can build my own foundation model for a couple of $100 million. I can count on an open source model that I can bring in and stabilize, and it will be my model, and I'm going to use it. Nobody's going to change it. It's behind my firewall. I can build a company on that, and I can be confident that it won't change because I'm in control. Or I can count on OpenAI or Gemini or Claude and be subject to whatever changes they make. That's tricky. In the meantime, I should be thinking about being AI centric. Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you see regulations in any way interfering with AI model development?
Not in this administration.
Yeah.
We just had JD Vance do a very short speech at the Paris AI conference saying it's all about getting there first. It's all guns blazing. It's all gas, no brakes. And that's different. The European Union has a different stance on that. China has a different approach. I'm not sure what it is, but they have a different approach. So I think R&D just got a big green light.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you know anything about the whole like visual hallucination problem with AI? Do you think that is going to be solved pretty quickly with regard to placing text in generative AI images?
For the same reason, the value is enormous. All I can tell you about visual is these days when I'm in a group photo and everybody waves their hands high, I always do that one. I wasn't there. That wasn't me. The high end, I mean, if I'm Adobe, I am working overtime to make sure that this works perfectly so that somebody can create a full-on 60-second, beautifully produced ad that is absolutely indistinguishable from having spent millions of dollars on a set. So the value there, the potential value is so big that these problems are going to be solved. This is early days. I mean, you remember the internet when it started, and we were on 14.4 dial-up modems, and you waited 10 minutes for the page to load, and will it ever get better? And of course it will. The value is obvious.
Yeah. I still remember on iPhones when they didn't have any motion. It was just like static images, everything was static. And it was such a big deal when that changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think the concept of websites will change the way that they're built with AI, such that maybe there's, instead of having all of these different pages and the user has to navigate to them, there will be just a sort of singular page with dynamic content, and then the AI would interact with the user to just display whatever content they want to see?
So let's start with what you just described. That exists today. I encourage you to take a look at a company called Twik.io, Twik.io, that does exactly what you just said. So it looks at your fingerprint, what operating system, what browser, what version, what your computer fingerprint, and says, okay, you're like the rest of these people. This is the segment you're in, and that segment tends to like to see these products first. And as soon as you start clicking around, it says, oh, now we know more about you. So it's absolutely behavioral responsive. Now let's move to the next version, which is I'm going to have a regular website as I have had. Radio didn't kill the radio star, really. We're going to have websites for humans to click on because my dad is online. We're also going to have an avatar that's going to say, hey, Alex, welcome to the website. What are you looking for? How can I help you? And you will talk to it and ask it questions, and it will have access to all of the information that it needs to in order to tell you what you need to know. All I need is your phone number. All I'm looking for is, what are the store hours? All I want to know is, does it come in purple? And yeah, it does. What size would you like? And that is a conversation. And then the final is my agent will scour the internet and find the things that I am going to need before I know I need them, and negotiate with your agent for price and delivery.
So you do see a personal AI coming out in the future that
100%.
acts on your behalf.
Absolutely. Again, the value is so obvious. It's all those things. Right now, we've got all of these companies doing the ability for the large language model to use a browser. Oh, look, it can use the mouse and the keyboard. And isn't that exciting? Yeah, sure. Very exciting. Give me a break. Give me 2.5 years, and I will have my own agent that remembers everything about me, knows my credit card number, knows my medical history, knows my finances, and will communicate on my behalf with the other agents. Now, I'm seeing a lot more people saying, oh, in fact, another Ethan Mollick reference today, he shared a paper about having your avatar show up at meetings on your behalf using your video and your voice and with your agenda, like not just the meeting agenda, but your personal goals. To which I say, no, I'm not interested. If I could be absolutely confident, let me put it this way. I hire 25 people to go do the work that I want them to do, and they don't do it perfectly, but it gets done. But my expectation for a computer to do what I want to do is the difference between being in the back seat of a taxi versus being in a self-driving car. Like, that self-driving car better be 100% or I'm not getting in.
Mm-hmm.
Taxi driver, might not even speak English, might be fine. So my expectation is that my personal agent will communicate with other agents really well, deterministically, but I'm not going to send it out into the world pretending to be me. I think that's disrespectful.
Yeah, and at that point, you're better off just setting up an AI only company with different agents and having them interact rather than having the agents interact with humans.
There will be all levels of that. The things that are high precision, high value, I want a human in the loop 100%. But if it's putting the right ad in front of the right person at the right time, whatever. I'm paying 1/100th of a penny to put this message in front of you. If it's the wrong message, it doesn't hurt so bad.
Yeah, speaking of that, and speaking of just marketing as it evolves, do you think that it's basically time for marketing to become more of a science and less of an art form? Because I've seen All different kinds of companies, marketing seems to be being built from scratch in all different kinds of companies without much of an understanding of how it should be built or what really works across industries. And it's always just grabbing little insights from individual people. And if you look at something like finance, there is a way to do finance. The people go to school for it and they learn it, and it's still applicable after you leave school. In marketing, it feels like you leave school and all of a sudden it's already out of date and you need to learn a whole new set of things. So, do you think in this world where we're progressing with machine learning and other kinds of analytics capabilities and AI, do you think that it's basically going to help marketing become more of a science rather than an art form?
No. Yes. It is art and science. So the science is what's the result and how do I optimize the result? And that's great. But the art is human psychology. And that is something that we don't have a handle on. Human psychology is never going to be a hard science. Let's look at what's happening in the real world and measure it and try to make some conclusions and have insights about it, take action, and then see the results of that action. But I don't know if these three chemicals with that chemical at this temperature and this pressure are going to have the same response every time unless I test it and test it. That's the physical world. But when we get into psychology, there's just no telling. There is no standard human response. As Sherlock Holmes says, it's easy to predict what the population is going to do and impossible to predict what an individual will do.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess the only way that it could be maybe more automated or more scientific would just be to standardize the input of customers and prospects into the marketing activities, and just creating a more consistent feedback loop to learn from people, to get that psychology input to learn from.
That's assuming that psychology input is static, and it's not. My response to your ad this afternoon is different than it is this morning.
Yeah.
I didn't have lunch, and therefore my response is different.
Yeah. So you don't see any sort of, even if we're talking 20 or 30 years down the line, so you don't see a more standardized way to analyze and predict psychological responses?
Correct. There will be some transactions that can absolutely be deterministic, if you will. My agent says, Jim, the microphones in your kitchen have alerted me to the fact that your dishwasher is about to fail in 30 days. So I've reached out. I've found 12 different dishwashers that'll fit in your kitchen. 5 of them will fit in your style. 3 of them will fit in your budget. 2 of them will fit in your schedule. And would you like to have the one installed on Thursday that has the highest rating on Yelp or the highest rating on Wirecutter? 1 or 2. And I'm going to go, I didn't even know I had a problem. And that, my agent reaching out to the sellers of dishwashers, that's a deterministic agent to agent. There is no psychology. This is a product that is needed. We're not in persuasion mode anymore. We're in shopping. We're just looking to do a negotiation. But do I need a dishwasher is the psychological part. If I walk into the kitchen and there's water all over the floor, how did you know as a seller of dishwashers that was going to happen to me? You didn't know. How did you know I was about to be in market? You don't know.
Wow. What about shifting gears to the sales side? Marketing requires that prediction of who's in market and individuals' core drivers. But let's say sales, and in particular inbound sales, where you're responding to a hand raising action by an individual and then maybe having an AI architect the response, whether it's from an actual person on their behalf or just an AI natively responding. Do you think that will eventually be a more dominant way that companies sell to inbound leads, or do you think it will always be a more assisted form of selling?
Depends on the product. So if I want to move to a new city and buy a house, yeah, the agent The automation is not going to help me as much as a human whom I can look in their eye and find out if they really understand what the neighborhood is like and get a feel for and blah, blah, blah. If I'm in market for a new pair of Levi's blue jeans, or I need to replace my toothpaste, it's like, I don't need to talk to a human at all. I know my size, I know my style. I go to Amazon, I click the button, I'm done. Or I could just say, hey, agent, go buy, or the agent will have watched what's happening in the washing machine and say, yeah, it's time for you to get a new pair of pants, and then go buy them for me. But my desire as a consumer to deal with an agent is going to increase exponentially. Right now, I have a simple question, and I go to a website, and I'm sure the answer is there, but I fumble around with navigation and I can't find it, and I get frustrated. And in the lower right-hand corner is this little bot, and I click on it, and it says, "Hi, how can I help you? I'm looking for a garbage disposal that will fit in this kind of a sink and that I can get into my house by Thursday." And it says, "I don't understand your question. I will turn you over to a human." And I just hate those things.
Yeah.
But if it's generative AI, it says, "Oh, I understand the context. I can let me ask you a few questions about your kitchen." And that is so much better than getting a call center where there are junior people who are not properly trained, who are following a script, who have to ask me 17 questions because they don't know the context either. That is so frustrating. I don't want to do that. The highest customer service that I've experienced is being an upper level traveler on United Airlines. I have a special phone number. I call, a human always answers. They know their stuff. And I can speak to them in their language. I can use United Airlines specific keywords with them, and they understand that I understand, and we can conduct business, and that's great. But everywhere else, it's, "Hi, I'm having this problem with Microsoft Word. Oh, let me transfer you to the call center that's located somewhere on the planet where English is not their first language. And they're going to ask me 1,000 questions. And all I want to do is ask this one thing." So if I can talk to generative AI and say, "Here is a picture of my screen, here's the problem I'm having," and it understands the context, I'm a happier camper. So my expectation for getting good customer service is going up significantly.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the implications of that for marketing budgets. If in this future we have agents that are doing a lot of the buying process on our behalf, especially for lower ticket items where it's just less of a need to talk to people and less of a need to do the shopping process on your own, then wouldn't companies shift their budget, reduce their budget, especially in the mid and lower funnel, since AI is going to pick up on those buying signals and be able to process a lot of that transaction? They'll shift the focus of the budget to the upper funnel for awareness and branding, and then just reduce overall because there's less of a need to influence people when the AIs are influencing. And then they would focus a lot of budget on content creation as well, that the AIs would then scan and read and use that to make their decisions on informing those customers that previously would have had to get that information themselves. Is that how you see the marketing budgets changing in that situation in the future?
Yes to all of the above, except for the lowering of the budget overall. So I need to take any leftover money, any extra dollars, and put it into branding because it's about awareness. My agent knows what kind of dishwasher I have, knows how much I spend on dishwashers, knows my budget tolerance, and knows my brand preference. So getting my agent to be willing to switch brands is even harder than getting me to switch brands. Get me to change the toothpaste I use. That's a decision I made 45 years ago. And I'm not making that decision again. I don't have the brain time for that. I don't want to waste any cycles on toothpaste. I'm done. I'm moving on. So you're going to have to spend oodles of brand money to get me to change my toothpaste, which, by the way, I subscribe to on Amazon. I don't even shop for it anymore. It shows up.
Interesting. So, what would that branding look like if you're advertising almost to an AI as well as a human?
You will be advertising to humans in order to get them to convince mom and dad to buy a different flavor of ice cream. So you want to advertise to me that at my age, in my region, given the mineral hardness of the water that comes out of my pipes, I should really switch to brand X toothpaste. No, really, you should. And I'm going to say, hey, agent, what do you think about switching to brand X? And it's going to go do all of its research and come back and say, yeah, they got a point. You might try it to see if you like the flavor. So yeah, okay, let's do a test. Now, that kind of personalization to convince me to try, because once I've switched from toothpaste A to toothpaste X, my customer lifetime value is enormous.
Yeah. I love that analogy, that because a lot of cereal companies, for example, do advertise to the child to convince the parent. Yeah, that's interesting. And a lot of that would be focusing on values rather than features and functions, and having the brand align with the values of the customer. And then that would be the new, and that already is a lot of how marketing works, but it would be even more high level probably than how current advertisers work, especially if you look at, for instance, how AI models are all advertised in reference to one another. They have these technical competitions for them that we don't even know how to really understand. When we just see the bar chart. Oh, look, this one's on top now. And so what really matters, Grok does a good example of this, that they're like, our values are different than the other AIs. The other AIs are all technical. And at least Grok is going on, we're going to try to be the non woke, just truth seeking. So if those are your values, go with us. And I think that does give an insight into the future of advertising, is that it's much more value focused, similar to Apple or any of the best advertising companies. It's all values.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have a snappy retort.
So, in many ways, AI will actually improve marketing because it will take away a lot of the noise in advertising and focus on what we love, which is just, what is the core message of the brand that we can really connect with.
AI will improve the messaging. It will not reduce the noise. The noise is made by people who are bad at marketing. And there is an endless supply of those. All you need to do is look in your spam filter. When was the last time you actually looked in your spam filter? It's shocking.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. Do you think that the spam filters already work really well?
Mhm.
How do you see that progressing in the future? Using AI to classify and remove noise from the day-to-day experience of consumers.
I can't tell you how equipped we've all become at ignoring online ads. When was the last time you actually clicked on a banner ad or even cognitively saw one?
Yeah.
I've got enough trouble with cookie consent. Please give me a bot that just accepts all cookies all the time and leave me alone.
Yeah.
But the putting the right message in front of the right person at the right time is always going to be the challenge. And the signals of intent are changing. So a search, we're being trained to, instead of use a Boolean search in Google, we're using a run-on sentence. I'm looking for this, but I want it like that, but I don't want to include this, and I want it to have great reviews over here, and it will understand all of that context. So this is where small language models will be really valuable, because somebody shows up at the website having searched for this long string, and now you know what they're actually interested in, instead of, let me show you the generic shoe because we sell shoes. So this is the style that you're after.
Yeah. That's a good point. Like especially when you're using like a chat GPT to search the internet as in replacement of your search browser, all of the inputs are very detailed in comparison to a Google search, where we were almost trained to just type in the keywords and
Mhm.
hope for the best.
Which, as an aside, with DeepSeek coming out of China, if you're Chinese and you want to know what's happening in the United States and you are the government and you have access to all of the data inside TikTok, you know what people are clicking on. You have this zeitgeist concept of what's happening in the United States. Now let's imagine that you are the Chinese government and you have all access to all of the insights that come out of a large language model. It's not just what are they clicking on, it's what are they, and not just what are they searching for, but what conversations are they having? How do I get out of this problem? How do I interview for this job? Where should I go on my next vacation? Imagine the depth of knowledge that you gain about the population of a foreign country by tossing a large language model out there. I'm very intrigued by that.
Yeah. I've always found it interesting in recent years to learn about how in criminal prosecution they use like Google searches and probably AI searches as well to understand if somebody's searching for something that's suspicious in relation to a crime they might have committed. So there definitely is that link between what people are searching and what they're thinking. It's almost a step removed from brain computer interfaces, which might be a
Right.
thing in the future.
Yes. But the thing, there is a step change difference between search terms and large language model conversations, where I'm actually revealing what I'm feeling and thinking, and I'm trying to get a response. That's a whole new level of insight into the human psyche.
Yeah.
One of
So,
the
yeah.
fun little parlor tricks that like 2 months ago was, hey, ChatGPT, based on all of our interactions so far, what can you tell me about me? And so the underlying rules for large language models is the three H's: being honest and having humility and being helpful. And they overwhelmingly are helpful. So when you say, please review this article that I wrote, hey, that's a great article. Here's a couple of suggestions. Instead of, oh man, this needs work. Right. So
Yeah.
when you ask it, based on all of our interactions, what can you tell me about me? 85% of it is positive feedback because it was designed to be helpful and friendly.
Yeah.
So when I want it to actually critique my work, I tell it to be, and I quote, brutally honest, do not be concerned about my feelings. And it says, okay, boom. And it's really helpful, instead of a bunch of happy clappy, oh, Jim, you're so smart. And gee, if all you need to do is add this one thing, it'll be perfect. No, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear
Yeah.
what will make it better.
Yeah. I'm excited to when they can let you fine tune the personality of the AI. I'm sure that'll come at some point.
I have a feeling that's coming very quickly. And the place that we're seeing it happen, or the need for it, is with Notebook LM, which, have you played with it yet?
I've seen it a little bit, but I don't use it regularly.
I find it very helpful. So here are the documents that I want you to look at. And then if I'm going to get in the car, hit that button and say, give me a podcast about it. And the first time you listen to these two AI voices talk about the content, it's mind blowing. And the second time, it's amusing. And the third time, it's annoying, because they're the same personalities with the same verbal quirks. And I want sliders that say, be more like Walter Cronkite and less like some daytime talk show host.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Turn up the humor. You made a really great point about DeepSeek and how many insights it could provide. I did want to ask about an earlier topic of predicting psychology at a greater scale, specifically with companies like Neuralink, who might at some point have a representative sample of the population. And it would still be something that would have to be predicted, but wouldn't that improve the predictive power of companies to understand what would drive certain audiences?
Yes, with a whole host of caveats. Yes, it will help predict behavior and intent for the people who are willing to have Neuralink in their brain. So you've already narrowed down the population significantly
Mm-hmm.
for not just willingness to experiment, but also ability to pay for it. You're taking a very unique slice of the population and trying to assume it represents everybody.
That's a good point. It's heavily biased towards certain groups. Would you say that what marketing is trying to do at a chemical level is identify which individuals are most likely to receive the greatest amount of dopamine post transaction?
Very interesting question. And the thought process for me is it is about intent and desire and anticipation. That's the most important thing that happens for a sale. What happens after the sale is not as important because I want it, I'm saving up for it, I've done my research on it, the anticipation is growing, I hit the buy button, and now I wait for it, and the box shows up, and it's over. From a marketing perspective, it's all about what happens before the box is open. Now, for loyalty and branding and product value, whole nother conversation. But just getting the transaction to happen, it's all about building anticipation and filling the mind with the value that you'll get. You'll have whiter teeth and therefore you'll get more dates. You're going to be smarter about what you eat and therefore you will lose weight. Whatever the goal is. The actual use of the product, that's a whole other department. So, am I measuring the dopamine that's happening during all of that? I think we're at a level of granularity that is no longer helpful because we're at the psychological level where the same person is going to have a different response to the same stimulus because it's 30 seconds later or earlier, or the sun just came out, or I didn't have lunch. There is a point at which all the data in the world is not going to be able to help you predict what an individual is going to respond to.
Yeah.
So that's why we like segmentation, right? You show up at my website with this fingerprint, you belong in category 27. Here's how people in category 27 respond better. Can I count on you doing it? No. I might find out after 3 clicks that you belong in category 423. And I should have given you a completely different message. But it's that constant refining of what I know about you in the moment. So I cannot predict that, you, because you live in this zip code and you have behaved this way online, I should put this ad with these colors in that magazine for you to receive a week and a half from now. Is never going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's the beauty of humanity, that it is so unpredictable and it's not an exact science. And it would be to dehumanize to turn it into an exact science. So there's a really positive message there.
Yeah, we're humans. We're delightful.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim. This has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate you coming on, and everybody go buy Jim's book and stay on the lookout for the next one. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Jim.
My pleasure, Alex. Thank you so much for great questions.
Absolutely. You made it easy. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll talk to you soon.